Hey, I'm Jen Wallace, and this podcast is here to talk to business owners, and we're sharing thoughts, experience, all about culture, team connection, and leadership. I'm a change maker, and I'm here to change your business. So without further ado, let's get into the podcast. Welcome back to episode 5, and today we have a special guest, Nick van Pooss. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you very much. Please see you again. Normally having a coffee, but it's lovely to meet you in more formal settings, I suppose.
Yeah, it is a different environment. So I invited you along today because every time we do catch up for a coffee, you do share so many different stories of your life experience. I mean, you're still young, but you've got lots to share with people. So I thought that it would be a perfect opportunity today to hear about your journey in leadership and also life and travels. And yeah, so I'd love to hear more about you and where you're at today and that sort of thing. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a lot, pushing on near 50, so getting into the old sort of latter stages of my career. But I think work's been an absolute. I'm very humble to what I've done in my life. Been through a variety of industries, a variety of people, different sized teams. And I think for me, even if we've been in circumstances or environments that haven't been great on paper, and in hindsight you look back and go, that probably wasn't the best. I think you can always learn, develop, and actually change how you want it to go. And I think that's the way what I've tried to achieve is that, I joined the police back when I was 19. So very, very young. I had a very, very sort of privileged upbringing, and I joined the police at 19, and I was a fish out of water, didn't really know what was going on, hadn't really been around drugs and crime, and then I was suddenly in this environment where it was a bit of a sink or swim.
Yep.
And for me, the police probably started my desire about learning about leadership and culture, because it was an experience where if you did something wrong, you were told fairly bluntly that you were useless and you needed to pick the ball up. But if you did something well, they were absolutely great in recognising what you did and all that kind of stuff. And I think for me at 19, you get a uniform on, you have to lead every time I left the police station, because the public were looking at you to take control. They were looking at you to lead them through whatever scenario you were dealing with. And unfortunately, with the police, it's the image of helping people across the road and changing tyres isn't probably actually reality. You're unfortunately dealing with people that are at their lowest, that have had something happen to them or their family or, tragic incidents. So for me, leadership was instilled on me very, very early about if you don't control or lead, then things can go south very quickly. So for myself, like I said, sort of in the police, I kind of very quickly thought, actually, I want to be a good leader.
Yeah.
And I saw leaders that I thought were excellent, and I kind of didn't have official mentors, if I'm honest with you, but loved how they spoke to people, loved how they dealt with people. And also there were the other side of it, flip of the coin. I'm like, well, I don't want to be like Joe Bloggs, because that's just not my style or not the way I want to be. So, there were some people in the police force that had the most amazing experience, the most amazing way that they could take me on their journey, which was amazing. And for 17 years, I just progressed in leadership roles. And I think this is the other point where I find fascinating is that I actually stayed as a police constable. I never actually got promotion, and I didn't want promotion. But the roles I took had real different levels of leadership, because what they say in the police in certain roles, it's not the rank that you are, it's the role that you do.
Right.
And I had a role as a PC, police constable, but I would lead a team of 500 people on operation.
Okay.
And I'd actually lead other senior officers purely because of my role, but not because of my rank, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So for me, I ended up having to communicate with commissioners, commanders, whatever role it was, in my role as a, inverted commas, lowly PC, but still have to lead and advise them. So I think for me, my kind of exposure to communicating with people in a different way, know your audience, read the room, kind of went through the roof very, very quickly, which I think has helped me going forward in all the other roles I've had. So I left the police in, when I was probably going back now, 36, 37, whatever years old. But I absolutely grabbed that core skills and took them to the next world, which in a different industry is very, very difficult, because I was institutionalised from the police.
Yeah.
Leaving that and then going to the, the private industry and different organisations for me was a real bit of a wake-up call, because, again, the way you communicate in the police is probably quite, I'm not going to say it's like the military, but it's very structured. It's very yes, no, 3 bags full.
Yep.
Whereas you go down to the private industry, and I was sort of dropped in it in a different country as well. So I obviously moved to Australia in 2012. It was a experience and a bit of a change of how I needed to approach people, how to manage people. But again, you use the core skills that I've learned from day one. Which
and
is
those
amazing.
core skills that you say you learnt, there was no actual formal training to have leadership or communication, was it? You said you grabbed them from an ideal leader that you respected, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then you would go,
Yep.
well, I can see success there. And then I see, particularly as a young man, and you see then what doesn't work when someone speaks to you in that way.
Yep.
So is that where those core skills
Yeah,
predominantly came from?
100%. I've never actually had official leadership training ever in
Wow.
any role. But for me, I just absorb. I'm a bit of a sponge. So what I like, I take on, and I want to utilise, and stuff that I don't, I basically put it in the bin. It's funny because you have courses in things like negotiation back in the police, or you have courses in how to be a trainer, which does help you lead because you're speaking to people and trying to get them on the same path as you.
Yeah.
But regarding leadership and management style, it's all been self-taught, which again I quite like, because again, for me, it's not about sitting in a classroom. And I actually don't know if you can teach it. This is probably a controversial conversation, but I'm not sure you can teach it. I think some people have it and some people don't. And obviously some people are very natural to it and, enjoy it. And some people don't like it. And I've got no issues with that, because we need people of all different skill sets. We need people, I call some people plodders, and I mean that with absolute respect.
Yes.
We need people that want to just come in, do what they need to do a good job with it. And then we need other people to lead and, do the strategic piece. So, I've got no issues with someone who doesn't want to be a team leader or a manager or whatever title you want to give them. Doesn't mean they're any less or any whatever. It's just what they prefer.
They're just as important in the business as well, isn't it?
Correct. And I think the worst people are people that are titled as leaders or managers that can't do it. That's actually worse. I'd rather people say, it's actually not for me.
Yes.
But we get dangerous now with the lack of training, I think, in the environment where people are given a title. They're given a promotion because it might be lazy promotion because they've been with the company 10 years. Let's just give them a manager title. That doesn't help anyone. And I think, you talk about culture, which is huge on my list.
Yeah.
It's scary that companies give people promotions or titles or whatever you want to call it and give them no training, no awareness skills, because for me, that's just going to breed danger, toxic, but it's lazy. People are lazy, unfortunately. Companies are lazy. So it's how we met.
And that's how we met, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And not that the company was lazy necessarily, but how we met was that you recognised that you've got 8 managers in depots around Australia, and they were placed in roles that necessarily weren't equipped with the tools to manage, particularly the people piece as well and the communication. And so that was fantastic for me to have that opportunity to work with you and find out that we were very aligned in our whole the cultural piece, how we like to work in a business and operate in a business, but also the fact that we don't have official training as such. We've been to a leadership professional development. We just intuitively know how to lead. So then helping your team understand more about their own styles of managing people and teams. So I found that fantastic that you had the the insight to know that that's what you needed. I mean, you were doing it, but to have an external person validate all the messages that you've been giving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important you say external, because, I could chat to the team, and I had a great team, and they were remote, so they were in offices all around Australia. So I didn't get to see them every day in person. And I think that also, we miss that personal touch sometimes with the travel and et cetera. And yes, I was trying to sort of, I suppose, input my leadership or my training or my skill set. But what I loved about, the training for yourself coming in externally is that, look, no word of a lie, when I said we're getting external, they're like, oh my God, don't want to do it, gas, I'm nervous, who is she, who's this woman? And what I love though is that they're, I suppose, resistance, if that's what you want to call it. And that's nothing against you personally, it's just the thought process that I put in a meeting in their diary and said, right guys, we're all going to sit around the table and probably talk about stuff they never have before. And what I love about that, and I wasn't offended. I took it as a compliment that within 10 minutes, they're kind of saying, yeah, Nick, you can leave the call now. Yeah. We're in a good place with Jen. So I really liked it because then the feedback, and of course I rang them up after and said, how did you find that? What did you think? Yeah. And I think their thirst for knowledge, like me back in the day, and that's not being patronising, was they were so hungry for the next session that we'd set up because these were people that were leading teams of 200 people, had never had any HR awareness, leadership training or whatever it may be. And after one session with yourself and then obviously myself that I could then build on that, they were saying, when's the next one? I had someone that was on annual leave when the next session was booked, and they cancelled their leave because they didn't want to miss it. Yeah. And I think that's an amazing, just a compliment to them that they're happy to pick up skills. And some of them have been, working for 30, 40, whatever years. And it's like the old, you can teach new tricks if they're willing to learn and if they've got the skill set. But you have to have people that are open. And, again, talking about yourself, the way you opened them up, we had, if you remember, we had people like crying on the call because they were talking about, experiences that weren't great for them back in the day. So for them to be able to be open with their time, their experience, and then everyone else learn, I was like, oh my God, this is actually quite emotional and quite it's quite deep.
It was deep, but vulnerable. Everyone was vulnerable.
But they came off and they're all tired and they're shattered and they're, what an experience. And I'm like, wow. And, I was going to be in part of some of the sessions, but actually I didn't want to cramp their style, as their manager. So I left them to it. And I'm like, yeah, Jen's got this. And they absolutely adored it. And they were so keen to rip the Band-Aid off in certain ways. And, I still speak to a lot of them now, still talking about what skills they've picked up from those training sessions, how they've gone on and how they've, how they would have managed a scenario 2 years ago to how they manage it now. Yeah. Even from that little bit of training, is chalk and cheese.
It's amazing. I think that's amazing. Yeah. Thank you. And I love that. And I know before you said it was controversial about, the leadership training and development. There's a part where you can sit in a course where ours was bespoke just for you guys and relative to what you said, they have skills, but then opening up and having an awareness. So experiencing conversation. And that's what I really like about that you were open to, right, we're not sending them just on a course for leadership. It wasn't that necessarily. It was all of us in a room, online, having a good chat about our experiences and sharing. And you touched on that because you were traveling all the time and you couldn't live with them every day at work, right, because that's what we do. That's when they learn more as a leader, and it's something I'm really passionate about. Working in businesses, it's not just go to a workshop, it's every day solving problems with them. Yeah. And training them through those problems as well.
Absolutely. And I think, training's a funny one because you can get some courses out there that are amazing, and I've been involved in some of them. And I've also been on courses that have been tick and flick. So to me, what's the point in doing a tick and flick? It's a stamp. It's almost like an attendance course, right? And for me, that doesn't actually achieve anything. But for yourself, when we did our training, you came out, we spoke to them. I think we had about 3 or 4 planning sessions even before we had the course because you wanted to know the business, you wanted to know what they were doing, you wanted to know their duties, you wanted to know the different exposure that we had between the 8 people. So if you bring a personal touch, I think the audience is going to be a lot more engaged rather than sitting in a classroom. You've got 25 people, they're all looking at a PowerPoint and they're probably thinking, when's lunch? When are we going to go home? So for me, your touch of, right, who are these people? What are their names? What are they into? What's their get up and go? Why are they here?
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Them.
What motivates them? Because then again, when you're chatting to them, they're like, oh, Jen's actually done her research here and this is a personal touch. Yeah. And I think that's what it's all about. But it goes back to what I said about leadership and training and culture. If you don't get it right, it can be one of the worst things. You get it right and it's one of the best things. Yep. And it's that balance of how you approach it. Yep. So it's excellent.
You got any examples or stories you can share with me of when you got it wrong, maybe? Because I love the juicy stuff.
Got it wrong. From a leadership. I'll tell you what I did. Yeah.
A choice or a decision that you go, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I take recruitment and the interview process really, really seriously.
Yes.
And again, I think I've been through some recruitment process that's been fairly shambolic. They don't get back to you, or you get all the way through an interview and you end up having 6 interview and psychometric testing and all that kind of jazz, and then they don't even get back to you. And I actually think that's quite poor, but it also probably explains about what the company is like. Yeah. So my red flag goes up. So I think for me, yeah, I've made some clangers. Obviously, we're all human. But I think one of the ones that really sort of resonates with me was that I was advertising for a role, and we had some really, really good candidates, and that's an amazing position to be in. One, because you've got the choice now of someone that's really going to bring value to the business. But also, it's then, oh God, you've got all these great people, but only one person can get the job. And I think I can read people quite well. I think that's one of my good things. There's many things that I'm not great at, but one of the good things I think is I can read people quite well.
Yeah.
And I got down to, I was interviewing 2 people, and both were completely different to what they would bring to the company. So we had one, Mr. A had a CV that was absolutely outstanding. It was ticking every box, every single course, great experience. It was like, this Mr. A is absolutely superb. And then I'll sit there and go, okay, what can Mr. A bring to the business? Experience, connections, business development, processes. So tick, 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 tick. But I call it all that's the cold stuff, as I call it. And then we had Mrs. B, who CV, if we're comparing like for like, wasn't anything like Mr. A. Nothing like it. Not bad, because still got to that stage, but new to the particular industry, didn't have the exposure, didn't have the clients, didn't have the contacts, but culture, tick, 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 tick.
Right.
Like, just had that amazing walk into a room, people gravitated to her, even in the interview process, and was just someone I was like, can I work with this person? Do I want them in my team? Absolutely, tick, tick, tick. I made the mistake, I went for CV over culture. And I hired someone because I thought on paper they would bring more to the company. Yeah. Very, very quickly, and I should have listened to I suppose that,
the red flags and the intuition.
Because I went with it, flipped the coin, and I made a mistake because whilst that person had everything on paper, within 2 or 3 weeks, from a culture perspective, a team bonding perspective, it was quite messy. Right. Because you had other people, and we had a really amazing retention rate. So we had people that have been there for many years, dropping someone else that didn't have that team dynamic. The whole team started to fracture, and it was actually quite phenomenal to see how that starts to break up. And what was, I look at it as a jigsaw. All these pieces were together in a really good place, and then you put in someone else that didn't have the team dynamic, and those fractions started, clicks started, communication stopped. Ooh. And it's straight away. And then, of course, operational delivery falls down. Everything started to just go a bit south. And, of course, I sat there and went, oh, man, what about Mrs. B that had this culture? I suppose fortunately for me, and obviously, you can go through many ways from an HR and performance management or whatever you want to do. Yeah. The person I gave the job to also didn't feel comfortable for whatever reason. Okay. So it kind of worked out well because they decided to leave on their own. They recognised that it wasn't working. They recognised it wasn't a fit for them, Yeah. And then luckily, Mrs. B was still available. Dropped her in. So even with her, inverted commas, lack of experience or exposure in the industry, the team then came back, started as one again, and as well, I'm still keeping contact with Mrs. B and still at the same organisation that was back then. So I think for me, it's not about reading what's on paper. It's about getting the right person. Yeah. Because you can teach most things. You can train most things. So if you've got the right person, they've got the right values and morals. For me, that will win over time. But I did learn the hard way, that one.
I've done exactly the same thing.
He's what he's right.
You read, and the resume, it dazzles you, and oh wow, they're good, and they interview, and you're, well, we can work with this, and we feel that we can mould them. But I love that you said about the culture. For me, is the growth mindset as well, that mindset that they have, that they can grow into the role and learn the hard 100%. Skills if they've got the right soft skills.
Correct. So and if you get the right people, but they need development from a skill set point of view, for me, retention is going to be great in a way because they want to learn. We do need to invest in our people, which I think historically, I've been in companies that we've paid no money for training. We've not paid any money for development. And then we wonder why they go elsewhere. And it's not about dangling a carrot. It's about, getting people, and I use a team, a few years ago where there was a person in the team that was basically treated like a bit of a skivvy, like just do this, do that. And don't get me wrong, they did it. they ticked, yeah, done. I went in and was like, what do you want to do? Like, 'cause I could tell what this person could do and what his attributes were. I think within, my 4 years at the company, they'd got 2 promotions as well within the company. And at the end, they actually then went out to, external and they're, oh, look, I'm so sorry, but don't apologise. If someone has got going off on promotion, even if it's away from my company, I see that as a success.
Yeah, that's their professional development.
And that's what they're doing.
Well.
Absolutely right. So what was this person in the corner like a mushroom, like just sitting there in the dark, not really achieving anything, a little bit of a glimmer of, oh, I can do that, I can do this. And then 3 promotions up the line, that gives me the biggest satisfaction. I would rather someone left the team to develop themselves for promotion for themselves than have someone sitting there feeling undervalued.
Yeah, and resentful. They can end up resentful,
Correct.
and then their work performance isn't as
Absolutely. And
great.
life's
They're
too
not
short.
connected.
Yeah,
and,
correct. Life's too short to kind of go in. We're at work for 8, 9, 10, whatever hours a day, and I think I've never been in a job or wanted to be in a job that I come in at 1 minute to 9 and leave at 1 minute past 5.
Yeah.
Not my cup of tea.
No.
And I don't want my team to be like that either. And I always use this phrase, my team get bored of it, swings and roundabouts. Because there are
100%.
days of, if you're on a Friday, if you need to leave early, I don't care what for, it could be for a haircut, it could be for a doctor's, it could be because it's a Friday and you want to beat the traffic.
Yep.
Go. I do
Yes.
not care. Because if I've got to question what they're doing or question if they're working from home, they're not the right person.
That's right.
So for me, it swings and roundabouts because there are days when a job will come in or whatever project will come in on a Monday and it's like, oh guys, this is urgent. Sorry, can we stay? I'll get a pizza in. It's going to be going past whatever time. But again, culture, if they know that the swings and roundabouts and they know that it's, and I wouldn't do anything they wouldn't do either. So
that's the big one.
And I'll sit there and we'll do it. And I think that's where you get the buy-in. And if companies take, you're just going to flog them.
Absolutely.
And for no reason.
And do you also find that you mentor those, like you talked about that piece where, maybe they want to move and accelerate through their career. Do you find that piece of mentoring is really satisfying as well, or even making yourself redundant, that they know, almost more than you, more than what you do. So you're just there watching them succeed, right?
Yeah, like I absolutely get a buzz from it.
Yeah.
I absolutely do. And I think for me, my last few roles as GM, I'm kind of, and I've been in industries that I've never been in, so I don't know the technical skills.
That's
I don't
the best
know.
part, though.
Correct, right? So I kind of, someone described it to me. It's like you're the conductor of an orchestra, right? You can't play the violin, you can't play this, you can't do that,
me,
whatever.
yeah.
But what you can do is kind of, to the best of your ability, is to kind of get them all doing
Like
the right
herding
thing.
sheep, right?
Correct,
In a
right?
way.
Yeah,
but
correct.
Yeah.
So for me, I absolutely love it, and I've met people, contacts or friends that they get intimidated by their team and their skill set. I'm like, mate, what are you doing? I hire the best people that not are going to make me look good.
No, I like that one. That make you look good.
Because if they do a great job, then I can go to the board of directors or whoever the CEO or whoever it is and go, my team's kicking goals.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we've done.
Yes.
Because I've hired what I deem the best people in those roles. And, as a GM, it's really fascinating because, I know HR, but I haven't got an HR degree. I know safety, but I haven't got a degree in safety. Finance, I know finance, but I'm not a CFO. So for me, I need those people.
The experts, right?
Because,
in those fields.
I'm the one that asks, I say to this, and again, my team get bored. I go, treat me like I'm 12 and tell me what you're doing. And then they break it down. But they actually like that because this is their world, right? So this is
They become the expert,
correct.
right?
This is their world. And I let them do it. And I think for me, and only last week, I still get a glow because a guy that I've not worked with for probably 10 years phones me up, Nick, I'm going to go for this job. What do you reckon? All right, send me the job description. Tell me about it. Why do you want it? And they kind of went through it. And then I took him through the interview process and did a bit of a dummy interview with him. And he was nervous because it was a big role, big step up for him. But I'm like, absolutely, you got this, mate. And we talk about imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, mate, blah, blah, blah. And, I got a call on late Friday, I think it was. And, mate, I owe you a carton of beer. I've got the job. Will you be a reference for me? Absolutely, mate. And then I'd sort of give him a reference, a glowing reference. And for me, it's like a really weird feeling where I don't know how to communicate it because it sounds a bit weird, but like I like that feeling that I can help and develop them.
Yeah.
And I want that feeling of them being able to come to me and going, hey, mate, what do you think? You know, I think I've probably reviewed more CVs in the last 6 months for people. I mean, I'm thinking of starting my own business, but, you know, they're submitting this. And I'm not saying mine's
career
great.
Coaching,
yeah,
career
correct.
coaching,
Yeah,
that's
there
you,
go.
right? Yeah.
But I just do it. And I'm like, well, guys, I've never been the self-proclaimed expert. Like, I'm not saying my CV's any good, but because they're...
But you know what you'd look for.
Correct, right? And that's
from the other side of the table.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. I help people write their resume or rewrite it or shift a letter. You know, I'll read a letter and go, well, actually, you haven't sold me, so you need to have a look at this. Or
and look, I'm honest, right? And I'm fairly blunt and I can be a bit direct, but in a nice way. And I think, you know, they might have gone, hey, someone else, can you look at my CV? Oh, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I'll be like, actually, mate, it's not. Because if I got that over my desk or with my HR, I would have probably said, nah. I know you that you can do the job, but on paper, we talk about that CV and skill set thing.
Yes.
And I think, you know, and I'm certainly not in the world of recruitment. I'm certainly not in the world of talent acquisition. And I read a lot of things on LinkedIn about how, you know, every job now gets 300 people that apply and you've got ChatGPT and AI that now is doing all these cover letters and all that sort of stuff. And I had a really interesting discussion with someone because I always used to do my sort of, I suppose, paper sift on the cover letter. Whereas someone I was chatting to, they're like, no, don't even read the cover letter. I'm about the CV. And I go back to that when I dropped the clanger because I was too focused on the CV and the hard, cold data. And the cover letter was, you know, who is this person? And again, for me, and this isn't advice for anyone, but I don't copy and paste when I've applied for jobs. I try and make it, I go onto the company, I look at their values, look at their culture, does it fit with me? And then how you resonate that in a cover letter. Because that's the first time someone is going to see that name of Nick van Pooss or Joe Bloggs, whoever it is, and make a decision.
Yep.
And I don't think people are aware that sometimes that is the only time you're ever going to get in front of them. And if they've put that in the shredder, that's it.
Yep.
That opportunity, that dream job's gone for that particular company. So it's so vital that people ask for help, get it reviewed, get the experts in to have a look at it, get your friends to have a look at it because they will be more honest.
Yeah.
Get people like yourself that has been around the industries and the business to give them that guidance. Again, especially if they get through the paper sift and they've now got to go on the journey of the interviews. You know, people are very, very wooden. They can be nervous, which I get. We've all been there.
Yeah.
But speak to anyone they feel comfortable with to say, how do I do this? How do I project myself? And I'll say, be yourself.
Excellent advice.
Because I can see people, if they come in and I'll say, guys, this is you got to interview me as well. So I want you to be comfortable with who I am as potentially your line manager. And you can see their shoulders just drop and relax a bit rather than, yes, my name's Nick van Pooss and yes, this is why I want the job. It's like, well, again, laugh, have a bit of a crack, talk rubbish, talk about the weekend. Because people take it all too seriously. I'm not saying I'm flippant or blasé, but we're all human. We all like a laugh. We all like a bit of a wind up and the right atmosphere.
Relatable, okay?
Yeah,
so that's the other part. You want to go in and be relatable as the employee, also interviewing a potential employer. That's something that was really great advice that you've given about the resume, particularly that cover letter, because it's also about you researching the company. Do they align with the values? Is that a place of culture? Are they a preferred employer, employer of choice?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that sets the tone for your next step and the success of that. And it's actually very interesting. I recruited for a client. It's not my genius zone. Again, I did it as a business service, knowing that I knew what she needed in her business. And it's a work from home role, 700 applicants because they were from all over the world as well. Yeah. And it was very clear, must have cover letter.
Yeah.
And the first day we had 200, and out of the 200, there were 4 exceptional cover letters.
Yeah, okay.
The rest were text.
Just a bit,
Hi, my name's this. Here's my resume. And out of those 4, the top 3 were the 3 interviewed, and the final 3, and she couldn't decide from the 3.
Well, good position to be in. So
there you go, right? That's brilliant advice.
So do you think? I'll put a question to you.
Yeah.
So do you think? And I read people that people haven't had a job for 6 months, a year, and it's devastating to sort of read where they're at. You've got companies saying they've got 700 people apply. Like, is it people are lazy when they're looking for a job, or is it just they get so downtrodden because they're applying for job after job and suddenly they lose their spark because it becomes, I need a job financially, for obvious reasons. Like, how do we make it more personal. How do we get back to the roots of companies? This is a good company to work for, and this is a good candidate to get, because I think there's something missing at the moment. I think it's gone a bit cold.
It has gone cold. A lot of it, I feel people are exactly what you said, just applying for everything and not actually looking at what they do want to do. Yes, I just want to leave a job and I need money. The best advice I could give is you stay in that job till you find a role online that actually, particularly if you are employed.
Yeah.
The other part where you haven't been employed for a while, that becomes disheartening. And again, it can be luck. You know, we've both been in that situation ourselves.
Yeah.
And at a level of GM, that's even, you know, we're in the pyramid now. It gets even less and less of roles available. So for me, I think what's missing is that people are just sending their resume without, it was careless, really careless recruiting. Also, companies don't want to spend a lot of money on recruitment process either. They just put the ad out on Seek or free ones, wherever it might be. And then they're not getting the, I guess, the quality of candidates. So you might get the volume, but it's the quality that we're seeking.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think there's always been a mismatch. You know, we have low unemployment, and yet I've got people, you know, particularly trades, right? I've got electricians and plumbers that are looking for skilled tradespeople. There's no one's around because it's become very competitive in the hourly rate. Now everyone's looking for money. That's what people, and they're definitely jumping around, just sending their resume in everywhere. So there is a disconnect in recruitment at the moment. So
and I think, Jen, it's a great point. And I think for myself, it's trying to tell people to stay true to their word, because you know, I've been on the job market. When I came over from Australia, I couldn't work initially because of visas, but then once I was able to, you know, I was applying for jobs which I knew, and it's not about being arrogant, that I could have done standing on my head.
Yeah.
But they were the Seeky jobs. They were the ones on, you know, Indeed or whatever. And of course you don't hear back. So you're like, well, hang on a minute. Do you not know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
And you're like,
Nick VP.
Correct. And then very quickly you get this, you know what? You've got to stand firm and be strong about your own ability. And it is hard because you do get beaten up and you get downtrodden. But it's about putting yourself around people, both family and work-wise, that trust you, that support you. And for me, and I've been terrible at this, right? I've always been terrible at networking because I actually don't, as much as people think I'm a peacock and I walk into a room and I fluff the old tail up. I'm like, I actually
Which
don't. Which
is true, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. But I don't, but I actually don't like, when I go to networking events, I actually find it quite uncomfortable. Hello, my name's Nick and I'm of whatever this company. But then I'm realising, well, you know what, so is everyone else actually. And no one's really, really enjoying these things. And I spoke to a lot of people over the last few years because, you know, coming into the GM roles, networking is obviously really important. But I found the benefit of networking is tenfold, because I've probably went to a couple of networking events when I first arrived in Australia, and to this day, still chat to them. Friends, colleagues, just, you know, still chat to them. And, you know, there's been times they will phone me up, hey, Nick, I've got someone in my team that's looking for a role. Have you got anything for him, for example? Or vice versa. Or, Nick, I've got a mate that he's been out of work. He's an absolute solid egg. Have you got anything? And I'm like, well, I haven't, but what I can do is put the CV out to whoever.
Yeah.
So for me, it's also, as much as networking is difficult for some people, I think it's really beneficial to get people, you know, it doesn't even have to be the same industry, because it's an amazingly small world and people do know a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. Yeah. And suddenly the kind of link is closed to you getting a door open. And, you know, I've had a few jobs that have been probably, you know, via recommendation or a friend of a friend, or, you know, a job that's been created. I'm not going to say for me, but a job has been created for my skill set, and therefore I've got it through an old boss.
Connections.
You know, connections.
That's
right?
my big word. Is connections.
It is, and it's really, because you can't do it alone.
No.
You know, we've all tried at some point probably and come out veg on your face. So I think it is about connections and
building relationships.
You know, and don't burn bridges. I've seen people that have, you know, left companies or left bosses, or you'll bump into someone, I'll tell you now, whether it be 6 months or 6 years, you will bump into someone. And if you've acted in a way that's not appropriate or whatever, it's going to be very difficult or very awkward when you then have that, oh, hello, at the bar or the office, or you do see him on an interview panel. So for me, and look, we get different personalities that some you like and some you don't. I get it, that's life. But just be professional. And if someone's not, just rise above it and just be you rather than sort of go down to them. So, it's the personal behaviour of individuals I find fascinating, because I'm quite into the sort of how the psyche works, how we
woo stuff.
Well, call it whatever you want,
Love
but
And I want to just go back to that piece about leaving a role. I do not remember who told me this, but it stayed with me for years. Leave how you want to start.
Mm-hmm.
So you leave wherever that may be, a relationship, whatever, and that's how you're going to enter into the next relationship. Because working is a relationship when you work, working for someone or for yourself. So that's something that's always stuck with me. That and because yes, very much about those relationships over time come back to you. So I'll give you an example. When I was CEO for KIS, I had an amazing team of young people that I pretty much employed most of them or assisted in the recruitment of them. And a few years later, only recently, I got a reference call for one of the young men. And I saw so much in him. I really mentored. I knew he was a bit of a bull. I would pull him back in and go, we don't speak like this.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? And he was an excellent team leader, but I knew he could go even better and move up into real management roles. And so this reference check and the questions the recruiter was asking were the best questions. I said to him, you need to actually, trademark this and publish it because they are the best. And he said he created them 12 years ago. And we don't place a lot of emphasis anymore on the reference checks. Mm-hmm. Everyone's like, you can put anyone's name.
Yeah.
But if you ask the right questions, no, you can't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of value in the answers. So I got talking to this man, never met him. So I'm stalking him on LinkedIn while we're talking. He's doing the same with me. And an hour later, we hit it off. And we had lunch a few weeks ago. He's actually referred work to me based on that connection.
Yeah, perfect.
And then it was so nice to meet him face to face, not just a picture on LinkedIn. So building relationships for me is so important in our business. Mm-hmm. And you talk about that, the networking.
Yeah.
It's networking. It's talking to people because you just never know, right?
Absolutely. Look, people 9 times out of 10, people want to help you.
Yes.
Right. So whether it's a career progression, whether it's a recommended a good employee, whether it's, hey, I need to get hold of that for a client, where can I get it? Or where's a good venue to go and have dinner? Like whatever the scenario, 9 times out of 10, or whatever the maths are, people want to help you. Mm. So for me, again, don't burn bridges. Every time I've left the job, I've finished at 5 p.m. or whatever the shift time is on my last day because I want to go. And I'm actually, this is a bit of honesty here and a bit of vulnerability, I suppose. Yeah. I've historically, and to a degree now, I've been very paranoid about how I'm perceived.
Yes.
And how do people like me and all that kind of stuff. And I think I read a really interesting article the other day about leadership, and the further you go up the chain, the kind of lonelier it can get because you've got to make decisions that some people are not going to like.
Yeah.
I always want my team to question me 100%. I'm never pressure enough to go, my God, that's a great idea, or why am I doing something? I feel as though I should not justify, but I want the team to be on board. So I explain why I'm doing something, or the decision, or the team has a I suppose a chat about which direction we're going to go in. But for me, it's actually it's a bit chalk and cheese, right? You've got to make decisions because that's why you get paid. You're in the role
that's right. You're the one responsible.
You're the one responsible for it, for the plan and the finances, but you're also
outcomes.
responsible for all these sort of overheads. And sometimes, I've made decisions that I know were the right ones, but I've been worried about how then the team perceive me. Mm-hmm. But I've always done it in a way that, I've kind of, it's the right decision, whatever the decision is. And when I went through a change management piece in one of my previous jobs, and people were made redundant, which on a personal level was horrendous for me because you're telling people that have been in a role for probably a good 20 years that they are now no longer needed. So you've got one, how do they feel that they've now been told your job's not needed, redundant, the clues in the title. 2, they've now got to go home, family, friends, and say, I've been made redundant. And then 3, you've got the financial piece of whatever their life is and whatever their responsibilities are that you've put a stop to that. So it's the right decision because for whatever reason, that's what the conclusion is. But for me, I still felt terrible doing it because I'm like, well, do they see it as Nick van Pooss has made the decision?
Yeah.
And therefore they're going to think I'm the badass that's done this, which again is not how I want to perceive. Now, I don't want to also be that magical person that comes and sprinkles rainbow dust with unicorns and fluffy rabbits and give everyone good news, because that's unfortunately not life. So it's a balance. And I think it's as you leadership, again, I phone up people and, you know, whether you call them mentors or mates or whatever you want to call them, oh God, you know, I've had a real shitty day. And this is what I've had to do, or this is what I'm thinking of doing. And, you know, again, if you're people that you trust and rely on, they will give you very, very honest feedback, good or bad, if that makes sense. And it's, again, surrounding yourself with those right people, because, you know, the world of jobs and people and team management and leadership, like my work is probably 95% team management rather than business, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
the business actually normally runs itself to a degree.
Yeah.
But it's getting the right people to do it, how you manage the people, the performance management in a good and developmental way. So it can be quite, I find it really rewarding, but also could be challenging with different sized teams and different people and stuff like that. So surround yourself with people you can have a chat with, have a beer with, get advice from yourself, informal or not, or work related. So it's, and I think people have been quite shy about that historically.
Yes.
You know, and I do think
it's a sign of weakness for some, though. I don't want to ask anyone.
Like,
that means I'm not a good leader and
but who cares?
managing. That's right.
Like,
we work better together when we share.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, I always try to look at the positives of life. And I think what COVID did, it really opened up people's ability to talk, because, you know, look at mental health now. Correct. Look at mental health. I think that's far more awareness now about where people are. You know, are you okay? And all the charities, which I'm really kind of supporting of and fond of, because obviously COVID was a tough time for people being on their own or isolation. So yes, people did have to talk, pick up the phone, whether it be Teams meetings or whatever it was, work and private. But I personally think that it's really helped people be more expressive about the issues they've got at work or at home. You know, and I think it's not that stigma now. I can't because I'm going to look weak, and heaven forbid I'm going to ask a question because I don't know the answer. And I find that people I'm the one in the office that asks them all questions. I am the one that asks all the questions. And I kind of, what I love is that I asked someone a question the other day and I said, I went, silly question time. Talk to me like I'm 12. And they actually said, Nick, there's no such thing as a silly question. What is it, mate?
Yeah.
And that person immediately put me at ease because I'm asking, you know, one of my reports of why they do it, how they do it, because I have no idea. Yeah. And they were absolutely brilliant to sit there and tell me, and didn't make me think, I'm the manager.
Should have known that because you're the general manager.
Correct. So it's fascinating, and I think that the workforce now are really embracing it. But that's got to, again, come from all levels. It's not just me as a boss or, you know, a senior leader, but everyone's got to buy into it. And that we go back to culture, and we go back to their mindset that they can have a free and open workspace and be themselves. Yeah.
I love that. And so for you now at the moment, you've gone to a team, you're general manager for a business. What's your business? It's
Remote Global.
Remote Global.
Yeah, so Remote Global, procure, it's actually got a sort of what I call a great sort of like a tagline, if you like. So supply, train and maintain. So we procure anything that companies want. We specialise over in South Pacific Islands, namely PNG. And, you know, in my time of being there, I kind of, the stuff that people have asked for has ranged from a fire engine to embalming fluid in body bags to nuts, bolts and hammers and everything in between. So basically we supply it. We can then also train people in certain items that we supply. And really excitingly, and we talk about development, is that we're setting up a training arm of the business. Because over in, you know, South Pacific Islands, training unfortunately hasn't been to a great standard. There has been some companies, both local and Australian, that have gone in probably wanting a quick buck, done a training course, got the check, got the money, and then left. And we're now finding some of that training is not even compliant due to RTO legislation. So, you know, we're going in, and what we're actually doing, have some really exciting conversations with Australian and PNG local government of, we're going to deliver the training to a standard which is Australian and NZ. So from a compliance point of view, tick, tick, tick. Because what we're actually then going to say is that the people in PNG that are attending our courses, we're actually going to give them the Australia qualification, because then if they ever want to leave or come to Australia, they'll have that on their CV and their exposure. Whereas at the moment, there's a mindset, let's just give them local training. But actually, let's help the local community get decent training, decent work. So for me, again, it's that kind of, I suppose, the mentoring people out in, you know, and I had a trainer the other day, came back, delivered a course, and he said he's been training for 25 years, and the course he did over in PNG was one of the best he has ever done, because their willingness and wanting to learn, he said, was sensational.
Wow.
Because he goes, he's delivered courses where you've got people sitting there, they're on the phone,
ticking the box. My employer sent me.
Don't give a shit, just whatever. Whereas these guys, boys and girls, were arms up, asking questions. He said, engaged, right? He said, right, you got an hour for lunch or whatever it was. None of them left. They actually didn't eat their lunch because they wanted to then carry on.
Keep going.
They were doing practical exercises within each other. So from a trainer, he was in like pig and shit. He was just like, this is the best ever thing.
Aww.
And he's going to me, he's like, when's the next course? I'm like, well, funny to say that. I've got another one in a couple of weeks. So it's been it's been a really, really good opportunity for me to go into to Remote Global and work with the team. Yeah. It's just, and again, retention in Remote Global, people have been there for 10 years.
So great culture, the owner, he's got a great culture.
Like, you know, I called it like within a couple of weeks. I said it's a family-run business, but with a global footprint.
Amazing.
Because it's head office of like 8 people, yet we're reaching far across the globe of what we're doing. So I think that's a testament to the boys and girls that have been there from day dot, regardless of role, and obviously the management structure. So no, it's really exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Nick, for your time today.
My pleasure.
I've learnt a lot, and I, as always, I love a chat. We could keep talking for ages, but we'll wrap that up today. So thanks again, and wish you all the very best with your role and the global and your training. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, perfect. No, thanks very much for the time. And like I said, we'll chew the cud over a coffee next week. I think it's my round actually, so I'll buy you a latte or whatever.
Okay, thanks so much,
Cheers,
Nick.
Thank you.